Hi everyone and welcome to the Floristry School. This week we are going to be covering all aspects involved in wiring, taping, mossing, feathering and mounting flowers. Now you're probably thinking, why do I need to know all of this? But to be a professional florist, if you can get your wiring skills up to speed, you can just add that to your toolbox of floristry and aids to help your work much easier. Now wiring is a way of eliminating bulk and weight. So just imagine holding a dozen roses or 2 dozen roses and how heavy that weight is. Imagine putting those into a bouquet and having to carry them all day. Now, the trend at the moment, or for the last few years, has been for handheld posies. Personally, I don't like them because the stems are so big and the roses are so heavy that to carry that all day is a really weighty exercise. When it comes to body flowers like a corsage, the least amount of bulk you have, the better it is. And also in wiring, it gives you, the designer, the ability to bend and manipulate the flowers to place them in the positions that you want them to go. Now going back a wee bit further to the bouquets with the big round heavy bouquets or posies that we have now, with the current trends and in talking to the designers of wedding frocks, it's going way back to very lovely floaty frocks. So when I look at a wedding bouquet or am discussing a wedding bouquet with a bride, I always go through, what does your frock look? Can I have a look at the frock, to have a look at the fabric? And usually from there I can design a bouquet to go with it. The other thing is, by wiring, as I said, you can bend and manipulate and you can do whatever you want to do with the flowers. Plus you also get rid of that bulk, but also by wiring it just as like a safety mechanism so that a head is not going to break off. Now when it comes to head flowers, everything needs to be wide and it also needs to be what I call moss, but we'll get into that in a wee moment. But before we do that, let's just look at the tools that you need and how the wiring works. Now in front of me here I have a range of wires that I prefer to use. So the thing to remember is the bigger the number, so this is 28 gauge wire and that's it there. It's almost just a little bit thicker than here, and so that wire would be used for a very delicate flower, but we will cover that, so just bear with me. So I've got here 28, I've got 26, I've got 24, I've got 20, I've got 22, 20 and 18. Now an 18 wire is what you would use for really heavy flowers, which I'll get to in just a moment. Now let me show you how it works. I'm going to show you how to wire Camelia Leaves and I'm going to show you how to use Ivy Leaves, because these are the two flowers that I prefer to use, especially if I'm doing a bouquet into a lady holder or even doing a wired bouquet. And I'll show you how that works in a minute too, but when you are using something like this, you need to have a collar of leaves or something strong as a texture structure before you start. Now as I said, the Camelia Leaves are really good, and I love that they're strong. I also like that they've got this wonderful luster on them, and equally so I like to use the Ivy Leaves. They both have a really important role to play with most wired floral designs that you do. So let me just show you how the wires work. Using the very finest wire, I'm just going to put this through here for a minute just to quickly show you, and I'll go into this in depth in a minute. When you're wiring, when you hold the form up, it should stay up. So if it's drooping like that, it's just going to continuously droop. So the wire needs to be strong enough to hold it. So going to a 24 gauge, look what happens. It stays up. Now it's going to take you practice and time to work out which wire will go with what, but as a general rule I like a 22 and about a 24 wire for anything that's going on the head, unless you're used to wearing a helmet and you know what that weight feels like. Anything on the head has to be as light as possible. Now let me demonstrate wiring that same leaf using an 18 gauge wire. Already I know that it's starting to break the fibres of the leaf, and when I bring it down and try to wire that around, see what happens? See how that's all sort of cracked up? that is the wrong wire. So you will learn as you go what's going to be the best wire for the project that you're, or the leaf or the material that you're wiring. Now let's just move a little bit further into the wiring techniques and the different ways in which you can wire a leaf. Right, using the 24 gauge wire, there's several ways that you can do this. Now the strength of that leaf is up that main vein just along there. Now there's two ways that you can do it. You can turn it over. Now you're probably saying to yourself, why am I wiring? Well, the reason I'm wiring is I've got to get, if I want to use that leaf as a backer, I've got to get that into there and I've got to make sure that it stays there. If you don't wire it, just walking with, by the time you get all the flowers into it, what will happen is it will just slowly just fall out. So the wiring is also a wonderful way of giving stability and good anchorage into a form or a container like so. So there are two ways that you can do it. Turning it over, and then you go up the main vein there, which is where it's going to be the strongest. Come up about a good third, gently poke your wire through either side of that vein, push that through, bring that down, holding it with your thumb, using your other hand to gently just turn and twist that back onto that little vein there, that little stalk, so that it holds firmly. Now that's one way that you can do it. The other way is, that's the one prong method, which is for a bouquet, which I'll show you soon. The other way to do it is with the two prongs, doing exactly the same again, bringing that through so that you've got a decent leg on one side, holding it firmly with your thumb and twisting to bind that onto there. Now you're still not going to have very much stem length, but you're going to have enough so that when you insert that into the lady holder. Now I've got two uneven legs. The least amount of wire that you use, the better it's going to be, because if you've got too many wires, and say you're going to put 10 or 15 or 20 components into the lady holder, what will happen is all the wires will go like that, so that when you come to put your top flowers in, you won't be able to get them through the wire. So it also is, the gauge that I use is about a couple of centimetres, not even that, it'll depend on how much you're using, but always cut those stalks off, or those legs off, so that they're both even, so that when they go in or are inserted in, they are going to stay there. So that, and then when you put this into here, the foam actually goes down there, so it's a matter of going in like that and then pressing it down. Now look how much manoeuvrability I've got. I can bend that to whichever way I want it to go. So that's why to have the wiring and to know how to do it is a wonderful skill for in your toolbox of little tricks up your sleeves. So just if I go back a bit and just put that into there, that will bend and it won't snap. That will gradually just move out during the day. So that's why you have to do that. Now while we're here, I think I'll just show you how to complete wire this, and I'll show you another technique so that you can hide those little wires there. The other thing with the wires, nowadays when you buy the wire, it has a plastic sort of a coating or a paint on it, which means that it won't rust. But in theory that sounds fantastic, but it actually will rust. So we're going to have to cover those. So I'll just give you a minute to condense everything that we've talked about, and then we'll come back and we'll get into just putting this type of wiring leaf or wired leaf into this type of container. I should actually say that the wire is also a really, really great way of it giving a little bit more stem extension. So I'll just complete wiring this leaf, cut off those stems, and let's go to your lady holder here. So as I said, it's just a matter of pushing those leaves into there to form a really, really nice firm layer, pushing them in as I said, and really wedging them in. And the other thing that you should bear in mind too when you're doing your leaves is to make sure that they are all the same size before you start, and also to wire everything before you start. Now, look at that, really nice, strong, sturdy collar and base in which I can put the rest of my flowers in. Now, when you turn it over, as I was saying before about round here, see how I've got, you can see all those wires. As I said, they will rust. They say it won't. They won't, but they will. And don't forget that. Because this is wet, the oasis is wet, we're going to be misting the leaves, so there's going to be moisture, so flowers, moisture go together. Putting that into there, let me just show you another method of wiring the leaves. So that went from the back down. This time, let's look at going from the top down. So that main vein again, and I've used these leaves I've cut these leaves just a little bit, or selected smaller leaves. Right, it's exactly the same process, but come down just a little bit further. Now you can either, oops, hold on a minute, nearly made a mistake. Now you can bring that down like that, and you can then insert that leaf so you can only see how I've got the two legs there. This time I've only got one leg, and that just gets pushed down and into there, so that the only little bit of wire that's showing is that tiny little bit that way, just in there. So that will actually cover those, and it'll also give a nice back. If you didn't want to have the underneath of the stem like that, the leaf like that, and sometimes, you know, depending on what you're doing, you might like to reverse it. So to reverse it, it's just a matter of doing the leaf this way, twisting that around a couple of times, and then that could be pushed into there like so. But personally, when I'm doing the leaves around the back, or I like to refer to it as like a tutu, and a pancake tutu. So you've got your big pancake tutu, and underneath that you've got all the wee short layers so that it puffs out. That is what, and that's the reason why I like to have mine all of the same. And the other thing is that by doing them like this, you're actually going to have like it's going to be more three-dimensional. So I'll leave you for a minute to just gather your thoughts, and then I'll wire these, and then we'll come round and I'll show you what I mean. So as an example, I've put the leaves, all of those leaves underneath. There's the one with just the little wee wire poking through. There's the leaf that's reversed, and then over here's the one with the wires. Now, I wired those leaves last night, and there was just a tiny little bit of moisture, but you can see how the rust is starting to come through. Now, when I was doing my training, I was told that the girl might be wearing a frock that's $100, she might be wearing a gown that is $2,000. Imagine if that frock was in any way damaged with the stain of wire, because it's one of the hardest stains to get out. So always bear that in mind. You don't know how much the frock's going to be, and it's really going to be you who's at fault if that frock gets any wire on it. So that's one method of wiring. Let me put that to one side. Let's now look at if you wanted to wire leaves to go into this type of container. Now I've got a whole lot of leaves done here. Now you could, I'll just get rid of that, you could wire them singly, but sometimes for ease and efficiency and quickness, it's a good idea to wire your leaves all like 2 or 3 together, which is also going to eliminate a bit more bulk. Now when you're snipping these, make sure that that little bit there where it's attached, I'll just show you, when it comes off here, that you don't have, that's actually come, see how it's got, like that's just a little bit thick in there. That bit of thickness there is going to add a little bit of bulk, and when we move and progress through to another style of doing a wired collar, the least amount of weight there that you have, the better it's going to be. Now using that same gauge wire again, and we'll do a wee test. Hold on, I'll just cut that wee bit there off, put that there, put that leaf on top of that, and then let's put that leaf there. Now holding them firmly, this is the other method, going from the top down and then bringing that through like that, and then twisting and winding those together. Now you're going to have a little bit of wire on this side, and you're going to have a little bit of wire on that side. But for this type of design, like a collar around a posy bowl or any kind of a round design, a round container, the best way forward is this way. It also means that you can still bend and manipulate those leaves down because you've also got the added bonus of a little bit of wire there and the wire there. So once you've got that all done, it's just a matter, and see how much easier it is with 3. The other thing is that when you push them in, they always make sure that your wires go down. Push that into there like so, and you can layer them up, which is this is so much easier doing it this way than actually singly wiring your leaves in. So that's just another thing that you can bear in mind when you are actually into doing your design work. Now to me, that is a really strong, sturdy base of which to construct your flowers. So that's 2 methods that we've looked at, and I'll just put that over there so that we can come back to it. Now, what say you're doing a handheld posy of flowers and you need the added length of wire so that you can manipulate what you're doing. Let's get a few more leaves here, and we're going to now progress on to doing some taping. Okay, so using the same gauge wire again, and I'll just have a wee check to see that it is, and I'm going to put that through the front this time, bring that down, hold that like that, and then twist it around. Now I only need a little, for the method that I'll show you in a moment, I only need a little bit of wire, and then I'll just hold it up to make sure, yep, look at that, it's nice and straight, perfect for what we want for the next lesson. Okay, so I'm going to need a few leaves. The other thing is, wire everything before you start, just coming up a good third, bringing that through, and I'm using the top so that I've got the wee bit at the bottom again, and then twist that around there. Right, let's just walk away from this for a moment, and now let's go on to what we refer to, or I call taping or binding, the stems of anything that you have wired. Now, as I said, the reason you do that is because, well, there's 2 reasons. One's to cover the wires so that you don't get any rust mark, and the other thing is the tape that you use, or the parafilm, here I'm referred to as parafilming, actually helps to seal in a little bit of moisture. Now, there's 2 varieties that I like to use. This is the parafilm. It's like a plastic. Let me just show you what that looks like. There it is. That's what it looks like, and the great thing about this is it's self-adhesing to itself, and it stretches out, and as it stretches, it actually binds to the stem and down the sides of the wire, and if it's pulled strongly enough and wrapped and bound around itself, it won't unravel. Now that's one type, that's the green. It also comes in white, and as a general rule with most of the things I'm doing, if I'm using fresh flowers that have got a green stem, I would use the green tape. But if I was doing something where they were beautiful white flowers like Stephanotis and Gypsophila, and only just a little bit of green was showing, and maybe I was doing a tiara or to go with a veil, I would use the white. So you're just going to have to gauge which is going to be right for you. The other one is this type of product, and it's a waxy, sort of a papery, sort of stretchy stuff, and it comes in brown. This also comes in brown, but it's very hard to get. So that stretches out, and it will also bind to itself. So let me just show you how they all work. And as an exercise for those of you who are just new to wiring, take an 18 gauge wire, and also take a little towel or a paper towel, because about now you're going to have nice dry hands, otherwise it won't stick. So I usually just have a handy towel and just keep dabbing my hands to keep them white. Okay, let's start. The easiest way to describe it to you, or to explain how to do it, is pull a little bit off to start with, and then put it at the top of the wire, and then just give that, where I've pulled it out, give it a wee twist like so. So this hand's going to be pulling it this way, twisting it around, and this hand's going to be going anti-clockwise. So once you get to there, now if it's too stretched out, what will happen is it will snap. So it's a fine art of knowing just how much to pull out. So if you're at all sort of there we go. So just the best way is to just keep practicing, pulling it and stretching it. And you might get a little dark bit there, but don't worry about that. So it's sort of almost when you're binding it onto the wire, it's almost like on the diagonal line. So just keep going until you get to the bottom and just practice, practice, practice. So see how this hand's with my thumb, I'm sort of rotating it that way, and with this hand, I'm rotating it the other way, so that all stays on there firmly, so that when it's done, it should be a nice, even consistency all the way down the wire. Now, when it comes to taping your leaves, it's exactly the same process. You take a little bit of your tape, pull it out, and then just bind that down where the wires come over. So that's that little bit there, binding that to that, and then sealing the moisture into there. And I'm going to talk about mossing up or using cotton wool to keep that even wetter in a few moments. So from there, just pull that down. Now, this, even though it looks like it doesn't weigh very much, and it doesn't weigh very much, if you're using too much tape, one, it's a waste of money and a waste of time and energy taping all the way down there. You only really, depending on where this is going to be positioned in your design, maybe a couple of inches is all you need, even less. But the least amount of weight, that's why we're doing this, as I said, and to just reiterate, you've got to eliminate as much weight as you can, especially if it's going to be worn on the hair, or if it's a corsage and it's going to be onto something like a beautiful Georgian silk or a lovely satin. You don't want anything that's going to be too heavy so that it may drag the line of the garment or whoever's wearing that garment. So, and that line is important. Okay, so once you've done all of those, where are they? Here they are. Now these are all ready. Now this is another type of base that you can do for a bouquet. Now getting all your leaves, and this time what I've done is I've wired from the top down instead of, oh yeah, I did it that way anyway, but sometimes I'll do it the other way. But as I said, I don't want to see the wire, just as I didn't want to see too many wires this side. So get all your leaves about the same size. They've all been taped. Lay these all one on top of the other, like so. And I'm not quite sure how many I'll need, but never mind, hopefully that's enough. Then what you do is you get a fine guide wire, and as a general rule of thumb, when it comes to binding things, I actually prefer to use a 28 or a 30. Right, get those all together there, get that bit of wire, and then just push that around there like that, and then just gently pull that around so that all of the stems have all been bound, and then it's just a matter of forming that little crown or that little circle again, so that you then there we are. You've now got, and that can just stay there. Now you've got a really lovely flat surface similar to that. Now let me just give you a wee tip. If I was going to make a bouquet, when I do my bouquets, all of my bouquets are wired. I actually don't like these, even though I've come up with all sorts of wonderful ways of decorating it. It's still thick. It's really, really thick in the hand. And when I see some of the frocks, the girls with their beautiful outfits, I think that the bouquet should be so almost like effortless to carry. Now to make sure that that is nice and flat, all I do is put it down there like that, and I've got to look how thin that handle is as opposed to how thick that is. That I would prefer. Now to make up a bouquet, I might be using 50, 60 flowers. The least amount of wire I use, the better it's going to be. And also what I've done here is with the little bit of wire through there, I can then, if I wanted to, get some other wire and I could back those. Now, I'm not going to go into that just yet because I need to explain to you more about why I haven't, because normally what you would do is you would be tempted to wind and to twist your handles. Let me show you why we are not going to do that. Where's those wires? There they are. Right, let me show you. You're putting them in here like this, and every time you do that, you twist it. And I'll just do this one here, and I'll do another one. Now look what happens as I'm twisting. Look how thick that's starting to get. And as I said, if I was going to use, say, 30 or 40 flowers, depending on how many flowers, every time I twist, that's going to get thicker. And as an example, just you have a look at that. See how nice and fine that is, and see what that looks like. The other thing is when I bring these out, like so, you will understand exactly why I have done it this way. When it comes to putting my flowers in, look how thick that's going to be. So if I want this bouquet when finished to be all neat and tidy up there, the only way to eliminate that is to not do any twisting, and that goes for a corsage or a buttonhole. Try where possible to keep all of your stems nice and straight and untwisted. Right, let's just have a break for a minute because we've got a long way to go today. Right, continuing on with the foliage. Now, with the wiring, I am going to go into more depth and detail with actual wiring mechanics when we come to actually making bouquets. So today's lesson is all about how to eliminate weight, which wire to use with which flower. And as I said, the smaller the number, like an 18 or a 16 gauge wire, is going to be your heaviest wire, and your 28 and 30 are going to be your finer wires for fine flowers. Now, often you, as a designer, when you get into it, you will have things thrown at you that come left or right, and the girl wants a big, heavy flower like a waratah. Now, unfortunately, I haven't access to fresh ones because we're in the wrong season, but I did manage to find an artificial one which will just work perfectly for what we're doing today. Now, the first thing to do is to remove, as I said, removing as much bulk as you can because we don't want that bulk. Now, look at that heavy stem. Now, there are several ways that you could do this. You could cut it short, which I'm going to do now. Let's get rid of that there. And even, oh, it's hard to cut. Even when it's fresh, it's still a hard cut. That there is really thick and bulky. Now, there's two ways that you can do this. You can go through the flower like so, pushing that through there and coming out the other side and holding it quite firmly. You can then bend the wire down like so, and then you can give that a wee bit of a twist around there like that just to hold it on. Now that to me is still a bit clumsy. Look at that, how clumsy and how untidy that is. I actually don't like to do it like that. What I like to do is, using a fine wire, do exactly the same thing, and because it's a finer wire, you're actually able to bend and manipulate that wire and then squish that in there like so. Then what I would do is, using my tape, I would tape that. Oh, it's so fiddly and it's quite heavy too. Wire that, tape that onto there to bind it. And when you've got big, thick, heavy stems like this, the issue that you've got is from when you go from the big, thick bit there down onto that stem, you're going to have to just sort of like keep winding around that bit there as much for a couple of binds so that you actually know that it's sealing in where you've got your cut edge there. Right, then you do your test. Will that stay? Whoop, no it won't. This is the trick, and something I've been doing for years and years and years. Now I'm just going to cut a bit of that wire there, and this is what you do. You cut a slant there so that it's almost like a little dart, and that would be pushed right up into the calyx of the flower, right into there, and then getting your wire, and this is what I call mounting. So you're actually going to mount that onto the heavier wire so that you have got the support, because even using that fine wire, if say you were putting it into the lady holder, it would be really hard to stay fixed in the design. But doing it this way, I've eliminated, and I'll show you what I mean. Bring that right down there like that, twisting. I have look at that, firm as firm as firm, and I've got the stability so that I can do what I want to do with that flower in whatever design I'm going to do. And we will cover doing designs like this, using flowers like this in due course. So when you look at that weight there, or that bulk, and now look at it, that is so much easier. Now you might find that you don't even need to take that wire, that's 18 gauge wire, all the way down. You might find that you only, wherever it's going to be positioned in your design, you might find that a couple of inches is all that you will need. So that's one thing to do with a big heavy flower. So that's, now the other one is if you had to use a protea, it's exactly the same as what you would with the Waratah, getting rid of all of that weight there, which, and when it's fresh, it is so heavy. Now there's another method that I use. Now I'm going to keep those little leaves on there because nature gave that to them. And this time what I'm going to do, oops, wrong wire, using a 22, bring that through there like that to that side, and then do exactly the same with this, bringing that down to there like so, and then getting a wire. You can then, as if you were using a guide wire, just gently just bring that around there like that. And although you've still got 3 wires as opposed to 1 wire, I still know that that has been bound onto there and it's going to be firmly fixed. Then it's just a matter of taking that, these little tricks. These are fantastic things to have up your sleeve. Then you just bind that down there like that, and then if you've got surplus to requirement wires, just cut those off, and I'll bring that down to there, and we'll do the wee test run any moment from now. Taking that down to there, and this is about the time that I think, is it going to hold? Yes, it's going to hold. So that's the wire that you would use, and 2 methods that you would use for doing big heavy flowers. Right, let's put that there, and look at all that weight I got rid of. Perfect, no bulk. Right, let's just have a wee break for a minute, and then we'll get into wiring and mossing and taping beautiful fresh flowers. Are you with me still? There's a lot of talking, and I've got so much to share with you. I feel like I've got a million words and they get all jumbled going from my head to my mouth, but never mind. Okay, let's now look at flowers. And I've got this lovely Alstroemeria here. And what I'm now going to do is, and this is very naughty, I used to get told off doing this when I was a wee junior. I used to just use my finger to just splice across there. The best way to do it though is to actually cut it. Now the reason we're going to wire these is that into a bouquet or into a corsage or a wristlet or into a headgear. What sometimes happens to these is that they can get droopy, or they can snap. Well, it didn't snap off, but it could snap off. So the best way forward is to take and remove each of those little flowers off the stem, and now we are, and look how all that weight that I got rid of. Fantastic for body flowers. Right, the next thing to do is to decide what kind of wire or what gauge wire. Are you going to use an 18 gauge? I don't think so. Let me show you why. Look what's going to happen, those delicate little tissues of that flower. And I think the best thing for me, wee tip to give you is, just think of that little single flower as having butterfly wings. Be very cautious of what you do to it. Now when you try to bend that down, that's just, look, that's what's going to happen because the wire's too heavy. I would be using for these, possibly depending on where it was going to be, maybe a 24 gauge. In fact, for most of my wedding work it is a 24 gauge. Right, that goes through the calyx, and then holding it firmly, but don't squash it, bring that down there like that. And because that stem is so delicate, if you, even holding it firmly, you twist that around there, what can happen is it snaps. So when you're doing that, it's to know what flowers you should twist with and what flowers you're best to just insert that through there and then just tape it. Now, Because flowers need moisture, let me now talk to you about mossing. Now, mossing is a fantastic little thing to bear up your mind. You just need a bowl of water, and I've got some cotton wool. Pull that cotton wool out like so, and then drop that into the water so that that soaks up the moisture. This is where you're going to really need to have this little pad of handy towel. Into here, pull the finest little piece of cotton out, and then just bind that down that stem, making sure that where that little cut in there is, that has been covered with the wet cotton wool. Dry your hands, because I can tell you now that it's going to make it really difficult to get this to stay on there. Put that on there like that, and keep that quite a big thick bit of tape around there, and then just gently, now I know that that's not going to stick, so I'll just dry my hand, just gently bind that all the way down until you have that little flower. It's getting lots and lots of moisture. Well, it's not getting lots of moisture, but it is getting moisture. That's one way that you can do what I refer to as mossing. The other way, let's get another flower here, that you can do that is cutting that like so, and then getting your wire, and then getting a little bit of your cotton wool, you don't need very much, twisting that around the very tip of the wire so that it's firmly in place, then bending that down ever so slightly. So I'll show you on an 18 gauge wire or a 20 gauge wire what I mean. So basically all that you're doing is just turning that, so putting this around, and oh, actually, why don't I just show you properly, for goodness sake. So the tiniest little bit, rolling that around there in your finger, like so, and then twisting that back on itself. Ooh, it's a bit heavy, this wire. And then all you need to do is to just give it a wee freshen up with some more water. Then once you've done that, what you can do is gently, 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 now this doesn't work on all flowers, but gently, gently, gently push that right through the center of the flower, and gently, gently, gently pull that all the way through until you reach the end, drying your hands again. And that's where you don't need to, if you find that the stem's going to squash like as if you were using an early chair or even a little hyacinth, you couldn't use the method that I demonstrated the first time. So from there, it's just a matter of doing the same thing again, and then just rolling that along. Now, what I don't like about doing it with a flower like I've used here is that sometimes you can still see that little bit of cotton wool. Don't really want to see it, because all the cotton wool is a method of, or a technique to keep the moisture up to that little flower. So often, if we're possible, I would do this, but when we get into spring flowers and wedding bouquets for brides and that season, I'll show you how to do that. Now, you might be asking, why didn't I just get one together and wire a couple? Well, if you wanted to do that, and sometimes it's easier, the least amount of wire, the better it is. If you wanted to do two together, it's just a matter of going through both the calyxes, cutting off that there because we don't want that weight, bringing that down to there, and there's a way of doing 2 or 3 flowers, or 2 flowers, or as many flowers as you want all together. And then you would just do exactly the same with your wet cotton wool and then bind it. All right, that's our stromeria. Let's look at doing something like a rose. Roses are great. Now, when I take out, let me just cut that off there, getting my roses. Now, did you see that? That's snapped off, and that's why I like to wire everything that I'm using in a bouquet. Now, there's a lot of weight in here with all these stems, and I've just got these little heads. As I said, the least amount of wire I can use, the better it is. The least amount of stem, the better it's going to be. So for a rose, what I do is go up into there using that same wire again, Bring that through to there. Now when you're holding the roses, you have to be really careful that you don't bruise these. Now I got these roses from the market yesterday and I dropped them. That's the other thing that you have to be really careful about. If it's bruised at this stage, don't use it, but I'll use it for this exercise right now anyway. Right from there, holding it in this hand, it's gone right through that calyx, bringing that down like that. Now you can twist that if you want to, but to be really honest, you don't need to do that. The other thing is I could, if I wanted to, I could moss this, depending on the heat or where it's to be worn. If it's to be worn in the head, remember that a lot of heat is emitted off the head. So anything that's going to be worn on the head, I would always moss just as a safety precaution. Right, so that's wiring a rose. Let's look at something like a Lisianthus. It's in between weights. It's not as heavy as a rose, but it's not as delicate as an Alstroemeria, as a single floret. Exactly the same process again, going into here, taking about, I don't know how to tell you how long to make it because it's going to depend on what type of design you're going to do. So holding it in your hands like so, this has got a really lovely strong calyxy bit there, bringing that through there to there, and then just folding that over to, as I said, I would still put a little bit of cotton wool onto that, which I'm just going to bind around the end of that stem, drying my hands, getting my tape, and gently just wiring and binding, or pulling that down like so. And just to reiterate, you don't need to use too much tape onto there. The next thing I wanted to show you was if you were wiring a, oh, what is this? A Calla Lily. Right, when you buy them, they usually come like this. This is a second grade flower. The reason I know it's second grade is because they've only just put the tape there. The really, really good quality ones have this little roll that goes all the way down, and that keeps the stem straight. Now, bride comes to you and she tells you that she wants to have Calla Lilies. If she says she wants a handheld, might I suggest that you talk her out of it? Let me explain why. Taking that off there, getting rid of that. Okay, here we have the stems. These stems are squishy. Now, these flowers are only a couple of, I think that I got them yesterday. Now, I don't know how long these have been at the market, but look what I'm faced with. See what's happened there, how that's rotted? That, yuck, in a bride's hand is going to be disgusting. The other thing to bear in mind is these things, they've got liquid, it squishes out. That on a bride's hand on a frock would be a serious no-no. So getting rid of that, let me just wipe my hands. So what I would do is, oh, the other thing is, let me just get my lady holder here. Sorry, I should have had this. Now, trying to get that into there, and say you're going to use for a lady holder here, say you want to use 10 stems of these. These will be hard to fix into there to get them to stay. It will be exactly the same as if we were using the Camelia leaf. It'll just work its way out. Also, that stem is really, really thick. So the best thing forward is to eliminate as much of that stem as possible. Get your wire and bring that wire down like that. This is where you're going to have to be firm but gentle, because if you are not, what will happen is the liquid will squish out into your hand, and what else will happen is that there will get all squishy like we saw in this, and it will snap off. So that is the best way to use these into a wired bouquet. Or what you can do is get your wire, and if you need the 2 legs, bring that down like that, and gently do this. twist that around there so that you've got just enough anchorage so that when that goes into this type of holder, you're not going to be able to get it in very much, but at least you've got those legs to anchor that into there. And even if that colour is only just resting on that foam, that's okay. So that's that method. Let's just strike all of these so that I can go on and show you the other flower that I've selected, and that is the Gladioli. You will find girls who are in love with these, and I am in love with them too, and you'll be thinking to yourself, now how am I going to arrange these? As a general rule of thumb, if it grows tall, you have to place it growing tall. So if I was using these for a bouquet, I would layer them so that they went up my hand. I would keep the stems there, I would bind the stems. But if you wanted to use those florets, because maybe it was grandma's favourite flower, this is what you can do. Gently, gently pull each of the florets off, and I'm starting with it because I'm going to show you how to make a glamenia now. We're going from a large, a medium, and then up into a small. Let me show you, and I'll take that off too because I need to show you what to do with this. Okay, so say you wanted a single gladioli floret into your bouquet. Easy, easy, easy. Get your wire. Now the strength is going to come from that outside leaf, and just as an example, let me just take that off there and let me just show you that to even get a wire up there is going to be really, really difficult. So the best way forward would be to do what we did. In fact, there's a couple of ways as I'm now thinking about it that you could use. Maybe it's a wire I've got there. Rolling that around there like that, turning that over back onto itself, and then you can use the method that I showed you over there, whereby you get your wire and you push it right down the center of the flower like so, and then just give it a little pull, ever so gently give it a little pull. Now the wire has gone through there and you have got that lovely support. Now you can take your gladioli and very, very gently just twist that wire, the tape around it. But personally, if you can, the best way would be, if you haven't got time to do that, is to leave that outer casing on there and then put your wire through. It's going to make it a little bit thicker, but you know, sometimes you just have to go with a little bit thick. And when I bind that onto there, like so, the great thing is that I've got more support than I have with that. So it's just going to be, and also it looks, this is definitely going to be like a butterfly's wing, very, very delicate. Whereas this here's got a little bit added support because the leaves are still on it like so. Now, if you wanted to make something a little bit sturdier, like a glamelia, let me just show you what to do. Stanley knife or craft knife. Take that off and just put them to one side because you can use those again. Now take your knife and cut that off, and then gently, 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 just give that a wee wiggle so that they come out. So we'll discard those. Now go to the next one and repeat by cutting that off. You need to cut it up high enough so that they fall out of there easily. Get rid of that one there. Then what we'll do is we'll put that into there like that, and then getting this here, that then can be pushed all the way down into there. Whoops, what have I done here? That can be pushed into there like that to form a little rose or a bigger flower. In fact, actually that's not working as well as it should be. So what am I doing here? Let me just do this properly. That has to go right down into there. Ah, that's better. Then this is when you would use the 2-wire method, being really, really gentle here so that you don't squish it. Put that up on the back like so, just exactly as it was, as nature intended it to do. And then put 1 wire down there like that, and then another wire through there like that, and then tape the whole lot together. And you are going to have to put cotton wool on there because I just know, and practice will tell you, and experience, whether that's going to hold or not. So I've got that all around the bottom. These used to be absolutely the most amazing corsages when I was doing my training, and they're all starting to come back. So just give that a wee twist. I need to wipe my hand so that it stays on there, and that will last. Now, doing this, mossing, will make your flowers last longer. And just as a little exercise and proof, when I bought the flowers yesterday afternoon and we're now 24 hours later, look at how fresh those little flowers still are. This is the method I would use if the bouquets were for this, the wedding work or whatever you were doing was going to be for a special event and it had a distance to travel, if it was really hot and humid wherever the wedding was going to be, if it's going to be worn in the hair or on the body, do it this process. Now there's lots more that we have to cover in wiring, mounting, taping, etc. But I think that for now that's enough. When I see you the next lesson, I'm actually going to show you using these methods, how to do a buttonhole, a corsage, and a garland or a tiara. I hope you've enjoyed spending time with me. I hope I've been of assistance. I know that it might feel like I've been left and right and all over the place, but there's quite a bit involved in getting through what we've done today. So as we go through, as I said, I will share all the tips and tricks that you will know so that can build up to you being a truly professionally trained floral designer. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you another day.